Welcome back to my animal education series. Today I'm here with Rick. So do you mind explaining to us what you have here and what organization you're with?
Okay, sure. The animal I have here is a Diamondback Terrapin. This is the only resident estuarine brackish water turtle we have in the United States. And my name's Rick O'Connor. I'm with the Florida Sea Grant Program. We work with marine issues with the University of Florida Extension Program. We're scattered all throughout the state, and I'm assigned to Escambia County over in Pensacola.
So what kind of work are you guys doing with the Diamondback Terrapin?
The Terrapin is actually something I was working on before I joined Sea Grant. This is an animal that is very cryptic. It's hard to find them in the wild. And so their population status is somewhat questionable in the state of Florida, and particularly in the Florida Panhandle. We started working with this animal back in 2007, and actually objective number one was, were there even terrapins in the Panhandle? And the answer is yes. I was surveying 6 different counties, and we have found them in all counties.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it's really cool. Now the next step is to find out, well, how are they doing? Whether their numbers, are they going up and down, or are they stable? So step one in that process is to determine where they actually nest. As you said, this is a saltwater turtle. It doesn't really like the ocean. It's actually in the family Myidae, which is the same family with the freshwater turtles, the cooters, the sliders, even the box turtle. Right. Its closest cousin is the map turtle, which lives in some of the rivers around here. So it is not related to the sea turtle at all. It's actually related to more of the pond turtles. But it does
looks very much like a pond turtle.
It does, yeah. And the size-wise, just for folks, you can see by a scale here. You were asking earlier, how big do they get? A female will get a little bit bigger than this, maybe 10, 12 inches. That would be a big terrapin.
Yeah, and this turtle, like let's say out in the ocean, would become food for a lot of bigger predators as well.
Yes. Now we do find them out there. We tag them. As a matter of fact, we found one not far from here in the Gulf. What the studies at UF have found is that they do have a lacrimal gland in their eye which can help excrete salt. So they can tolerate salt water. But test in full strength seawater, which is around 35 parts per thousand, that's how much salt content's in the ocean. The studies will tell you that they might last a month, and then they start really stressing. We found one just recently, within the last year, in the Gulf of Mexico near Navarre. Was swimming along there. It was in really bad shape, severely dehydrated. It had gooseneck barnacles growing all over it. Oh. And so a specialist who knows about the barnacles said that turtle had been out there at least 50 days. Wow. But it was in really, really bad shape. A vet helped us on that. Kudos go out to the Navarre Beach Sea Turtle Center, Conservation Center. They helped rehabilitate the turtle we named Lucky. And so Lucky got better, and then we released it where Lucky should be, which is in the estuary. So they like salinities more in the, I would say 10 to 15 parts per thousand is where they're comfortable. They can certainly live in 20, 25, but when you get into 30s, they start stressing. So
now you mentioned brackish water. Sorry,
yeah, that's okay.
You mentioned brackish water. So will they spend more time in kind of brackish water or more time in fresh water?
They can survive in fresh water. Folks who have them in aquariums a lot of times will actually keep them in fresh water. They're fine. They prefer salt water.
Okay.
So that's where you're going to find. Is that where
the food will be, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, it's rare to find these things. We'll find them at the mouth of rivers sometimes, but it's rare to find them up the river very far. They really like to be in the estuary of the bay.
And speaking of food, what kind of animals will these turtles eat?
They are shellfish. That's what they prefer, and depending on where they are within their range, the terrapin, actually there's 7 subspecies of these. Their range is from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, all the way to Brownsville, Texas. And within that range, as I said, there's 7 different subspecies. There are 5 in Florida, and 3 of those are only found in Florida. So depending on where they are in their range, they have favorites. Here in the northern Gulf of Mexico, we find they really like the marsh periwinkle, Littorina, which is if you ever go to the salt marshes, there's a snail that goes up and down the grass. And actually at high tide, it goes up the grass to avoid these guys and to avoid blue crabs. But that's what we find most in their stomachs when they're feeding. But they'll eat crabs, small crabs. They'll eat clams, mussels, things like that too. They're shellfish eaters.
And are these guys mostly found on the coast, since we mentioned brackish water? So
yes.
Along the huge range, it's only along the coastlines?
Right. And generally inside, they don't really swim around in the open bay, as you mentioned earlier. It's not a big animal. There are certainly predator issues. Most of the predation is on the young ones. Once they get old like this, there's not that many. Tiger sharks are known to eat turtles. We do know that bald eagles will take a few if they get the opportunity to do that. But to avoid all of that, they tend to go up into the marshes themselves, or in South Florida, the mangroves. So they'll spend time in the mangroves.
Yeah, I imagine down in the Everglades there's plenty of opportunity for these guys in the brackish areas.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the salinity level of the Everglades.
It's a little higher than what we have here, but they're fine with that.
That's good, because as long as they have plenty of habitat to go into.
Sure, yeah.
So within that large range, do you notice any significant differences between the subspecies?
Morphologically, yes. You'll see some coloration. This one right here is the one we call the Ornate Terrapin. You'll notice the skin, it's kind of faded a little bit, but these spots on the scutes here are orange. Just a little bit west of us, and you'll notice the head is real white and there's no real markings on it. Just a little bit west of us, closer to Pensacola, is the Mississippi Terrapin. It does not have these orange spots, and the skin is a little bit darker, and whether it's a male or female, around that upper jaw there, you'll see what I call a mustache. It looks like they've got a mustache. So as you move up and down the coast, there's the Northern Terrapin, the Carolina Terrapin, the East Coast Terrapin, the Mangrove Terrapin. This is the Ornate. This guy, its range is from the Florida Keys up to Choctawhatchee Bay, where we are now. And then you got the Mississippi Terrapin, and then there's one called the Texas Terrapin.
So what is the main advantage for camouflage with the, if camouflage would even work, for this skin coloration here?
Believe it or not, and again, there's a variety. Sometimes you'll see spots, sometimes you'll see stripes on these guys. The camouflage is amazing, because we have actually seen females coming out. They live up in the marsh, but when it's time to lay eggs, she will swim into the open bay and approach the beach from the bay instead of just coming through the grass. So once we see them up on the beach, we know they're nesting, and sometimes they spot us and they take off and run into that marsh grass. And me and my volunteers have gone down there to take a look for them, and we have to hunt. It's amazing. I've got a couple of photographs of them sitting in the marsh. You'd be surprised how well they blend in.
Yeah, like now thinking back, like if they go into like the beaches and from the bay with the light coloration, with like the lighter sand and down in the water, and if anyone's ever tried to look in water at the beach, it's not very clear under there anyway. So I could definitely see with rocks and the lighter sand how these guys can just completely hide from your view under there.
Yeah.
Like at first glance, you would think a white-skinned turtle would not be able to hide very well. But
well, again, we know the animal lives in the panhandle. I've talked to old timers who used to be gill net fishermen around here, if they've ever seen it, because when I started trying to answer that first question, or even here, they had no idea what I was talking about. Many folks here along the Florida Panhandle have never heard of a terrapin, and if they did, it's the mascot of the University of Maryland. It's not something that lives in their backyard. But then you show them one. I've had a couple of old timers tell me, like, oh yeah, I've seen those. They didn't know what it was. They just called it a turtle. So we don't know. That they hide very well. They do a good job hiding and staying away from us.
are these turtles endangered, or like hopefully the ideal answer is least concern? But
yep. In parts of their range, I'm trying to think. It's not. I want to say it's Rhode Island. It's one of the states up there near the Chesapeake. I want to say it is Rhode Island, listed as an endangered species. Every state, it's not federally listed at all, but each state has a different classification. And currently, right now, it's listed at least as a species of concern in every state but Florida. It's not listed as either species of concern, endangered, or threatened in our state, though the state is very concerned about the population status of this animal right now and is currently going through some ruling, I would say is the word for it, some ruling changes about who can have them and what permits are needed. And actually, you know, there are bigger issues with us right now. As I was telling you earlier, it was food at the end of the Civil War. This was a very popular food item in the Chesapeake area, and they actually had aquaculture going on here in the South to provide terrapins. In Mobile Bay, there was a big farm, but to provide terrapins to that market. But they basically priced themselves out of the market, so people quit eating them. No one really paid attention to the animal. We'll see. We don't know if they recovered from that. But in the 1950s, they developed what we now know as the crab trap, the wire mesh crab trap. And these guys do have a habit of swimming into those. And then the other problem is now that they are in those swampy, marshy areas, we're beginning to move into those areas. And bringing with them, we're building roads and highways that make it easy access for some other predators. I would say here, one of the bigger issues we're having are raccoons. They actually dig up anywhere from 80 to 90% of the nest.
Really? That's a pretty high number.
Yeah, it's a high number. So we're not sure exactly how to manage that. Again, there needs to be more study on how they're coping with this. I do know they hide in a lot of isolated areas. There are a lot of islands in the salt marshes that we see them nest on. And so they may be trying to adapt to that right now, you know, how to avoid the raccoon. But the raccoon's a big problem for them.
Would you say that raccoons are probably the biggest problem facing the
Here
terrapins?
locally, I would. I mean, again, we do occasionally find them in crab traps. We do, but I see bigger issues with the raccoons. I know in other parts, like in Georgia and some parts of the Chesapeake, they've developed so much around the marshes that the only high dry ground now for them to lay eggs are on the highways. Ooh. And so yeah, and so the road mortality is starting to become an issue in some parts of their range.
So how did you get this specific turtle here?
This turtle was actually an unwanted pet. Somebody had this as an unwanted pet, so we took it. It lives at the Roy Hyde Environmental Center. We have permission to keep 2 there, so we have 2, and we use it for educational purposes to educate people about this turtle.
So let's say someone finds like an injured terrapin, and obviously they want to take care of it and what's the best for it. What would be like the first step that they should take? Like, let's use like the Florida Panhandle, for example.
Okay, yeah, if they get one that's injured, there's a couple of things. Each of the counties, I can't speak for Tallahassee over, but at least here in the Okaloosa-Walton area and in the Escambia-Santa Rosa area, there are wildlife sanctuaries that are specially permitted by FWC to rehab animals. So you can take it there.
And then obviously the one in Navarre that you mentioned before.
Yes. Yes.
Which I believe we may have talked to, but hopefully that's for the future.
Yeah.
We can do a video there.
Yeah. They got a cool sea turtle center there, yeah. And they have terrapins there too.
Yes.
They've got terrapins there too. But that's what you would do. That would you call one of those rescue places, and they're not really rescues. I hate to say that. It's more of a rehab.
Rehabilitation
They're really
center.
rehab centers is what they are. Their intent is to get them back out in the wild.
Yeah, like the one that had all the barnacles on it.
Right. So we got lucky back out
A
there.
wild animal, help it out, put it back out in the wild.
Right.
And hopefully continue to breed out in the wild and continue the success out there.
That's what we hope.
And thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. Don't forget to leave a big thumbs up down below, subscribe to my channel, and as always, I will see you next week.